Hello, BookTube. We're continuing with my 2023 library tour. I am all accoutered in BookTube swag. I have my devil horns knitted hat that I got from Hannah at Hannah's Books. I have my Bob Cratchit fingerless gloves that I got from Sarah at the Bookish Knitter. It is quite chilly here today, even with the heat on, even with the space heater. This is an old house and it has all sorts of pulmonary problems. So when it's cold, this place can be made completely bearable, but when it's windy and cold, it is windy and cold today. The wind goes right through the building. Walls, plaster, insulation notwithstanding. You can put your hand up in the middle of the living room and feel the wind. So I'm protecting myself. I'm as snug as a bug in a rug with all this custom-made knitwear. So we are going on with our 2023 book tour. I am still comfortably sitting down. I think I can manage that for 3 more shelves. I'm going to have to stand up. So what have we got for this next shelf? It's a little bit of a jumble. Here, let's get the Transwise books done first. Okay, so this is the trade paperback copy of The Library Book by Susan Orlean, which is a wonderful, wonderful book. This is a wonderful, floppy, really textured trade paperback that the publisher brought out. This is partly the story of a fire at a great library, but manages to be, in the course of its length, also a great book about libraries, about what they mean to their communities, to all of us. As I always say when I talk about this book, the key difference, the key thing that you realize in this book is how different a book this would be if it were about a fire at a city hall in some city or a supermarket or something like that. Not only would it feel completely different, but no one would have thought to write a book about it. But a fire at a library, that feels different. Then we have a classic. This should not be here. I have a section for classics that is overgrown its length. It really needs to be 2 sections on classics, but either way, it's on the other side of the room. It doesn't belong here. But I couldn't pass this up. This is a beautiful illustrated edition of 3 key stories, three of the most famous stories from what we saw already, the sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, of Washington Irving's great book. This has Rip Van Winkle, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, and the Spectre Bridegroom, and it has illustrations all throughout as well. Who did this? Now that I got it here in front of us, who actually did this? Oh, this was Book of the Month Club. Some of you belong to Book of the Month Club now, but once upon a time, they did all sorts of original stuff like this. That commissioned all sorts of original stuff like this that you could only get through them. And all of their spin-offs clubs did as well. The History Book Club, the Science Fiction Book Club, most especially. A lot of those volumes are collectible now. And they don't do it anymore. They don't even do now. Their Book of the Month Club was also synonymous with a different size. So you could get, the March of Folly in your bookstore, or you could get it in Book of the Month Club. But if you got it in Book of the Month Club, it would be a different size. It would look physically different. And now the Book of the Month Club, as far as I know, they don't even do that. It's just the exact same book that comes off the press, only their dust jacket has their colophon on it. But once upon a time, not only were their editions different sizes, but they had editions that were unique to them. And this is one of them. So I grabbed it. But it doesn't belong here. Then we have, this is by Matthias Bostrom. This is great. This is just a fantastic book. I praised it when I got the advance copy. I read it and absolutely loved it. I pitched it very strongly to my editor at the Christian Science Monitor. She said yes. I also praised it to you. I praised it to every other reviewer that I knew, every editor, every publisher, everywhere. This is From Holmes to Sherlock. It's a big, generous history of Sherlock Holmes's life off the page. On the page and off the page. A big, lovingly detailed study of the life of Sherlock Holmes. I thought it was fantastic. There have been other books like this, but none that compares with this in scope or in the wonderful friendly enthusiasm with which it's written. I don't know if I'm blurbed on here. I might not rank to be blurbed on here. Oh my god, look at all these blurbs. Am I blurbed on here at all in the paperback? That'd be nice. That would be nice. Where are we here? Uh, oh, can you believe that? No, I'm not on here at all. Half the names I'm looking at are people who only knew about this book because of me, because I put it in their hands. But I don't appear to be on here at all. Well, it doesn't matter. No, I am. Okay. No, I'm not. I'm not inside the front cover. I'm on the back by name. Okay, so we can get rid of my sour grapes. But even so, even that still doesn't change the fact that half the people who are blurbed on this book learned about it from me. They would never have learned about it otherwise. I am a bulldozer. I'm a path setter. I'm out there ahead of a lot of other book reviewers, surveying the field from stuff months down the line when most book reviewers are nose to the grindstone, buried in their work because they made the tactical, strategic, and also spiritual mistake of having spouses, children, hygiene. Because they've loaded themselves down with all that garbage, they don't have the freedom to go ranging far afield. Plus, most of them go unconscious for 10 hours out of every 24. So I do a lot of advance work, and I send back word. If I see something and I say, this, actually, one of you knows this. One of you knows me in real life, has known me in real life for a long time, and pointed out that, asked me the other day in an email, do your viewers on BookTube know that when you use your off-used phrase, this is going to get reviewed everywhere, half the time that you say that, what you mean to say is, I'm going to see that this gets reviewed everywhere. I don't know that that's true. If I am a dictator, I am a benevolent one. Devil horns notwithstanding. Now that we're done with the Transwise books, we'll go on to the shelf itself. Here we have, I love these things. This is a larger library book. It's a book about libraries, the drama within. They'll have, great photos of all kinds of different libraries, including some that don't exist anymore. Oh my God, did I open right to, no, that's the main reading room of the Library of Congress. Where I've been, I spent a great deal of time in the Library of Congress. But there are libraries in here that don't exist anymore, and or that have changed purpose and nature and whatnot. I love books like this. I have a whole bunch of them. I am a huge fan of libraries, ironically enough, even though I spent a long time not going to libraries. It all depends on timing. I have made the Boston Public Library. I've put that back on my weekly routine. So I now have the great pleasure of going to the Boston Public Library. I don't go to the other library that I belong to in Boston at all anymore. It's not on my route. I would have to make a point of going there to sit in a chair and read all the periodicals that I don't subscribe to. Now, that's a great feeling, to sit in a deep dormer window and read periodicals from a table surrounded by marble statues with the street passing by outside. That is a wonderful old gentleman's club feeling. But I would have to do that. I would have to leave Frida. I would have to leave all the work that I'm doing here, all the stuff, all the fun that I'm having. I have to just pick up sticks and go there for some predetermined set of time. And once upon a time, that was something that I very readily did. Not so much with that library as with the Boston Public Library, because for 6 or 7 years, I had 2 dogs and before that I've had other dogs who were old, but not yet sick, not yet ailing. So you dog owners will know, once they get to a certain point, 6, 7, maybe 8 years old, they sleep all day long. They only want to sleep all day long. They're not sleeping all day long because they're bored. They're sleeping all day long because they want to. And that's pretty much all they want to do. You can psych up an 8-year-old dog to go for a walk, but you can't psych up an 8-year-old dog to be active all day long, much less a 10-year-old dog. And so during periods of my life when I've had dogs like that, suddenly I know they're not going to be awake. They're not going to miss me. They're not going to need me. So there's no real reason for me to be here 24 hours a day. I could go and enjoy other things. I've had periods in my life. I may have that same kind of period with Frida. I don't know if that'll happen or not. I'm okay either way. If that does happen, if Frida reaches the point where she is sleeping all day long and doesn't really need me around, I will probably take advantage of it. And stays at libraries doing writing and soaking up the atmosphere will be one of the things that I will do. But here's another public library book This is just a collection of photos of various public libraries, from the extremely simple to the extremely ornate, all throughout the country. And some of the stuff is just amazing. I mean, you've got beautiful old buildings like that. And you've got, I'm pretty sure some of these aren't beautiful. Some of them are quite ugly. Yeah, some of them are just strip mall type appearances like that. Doesn't matter, because the wonder is what's happening on the inside. And let's move on here. Okay, we've got this. Oh boy. This is the Complete Western Stories of Elmore Leonard in this great paperback that Harper did probably 30 years ago. And you can tell the cover and the papers are yellowing on this thing. When did this volume come out? 2004. It's 20 years ago. I have an e-copy of this, thank God, because this thing is getting older. Harper, they're a terrific publisher, but they're not an archival publisher at all. So this thing is not going to be, it's going to, nicks and pieces are going to fall off it every time I use it, which doesn't happen with an ebook. So I'm glad that I have one. Okay, then we have something that this featured in my year-end list for Steve Reads. Quite a few of these books did, because I love them. And this is Worm by Mark Bowden, the author of Black Hawk Down. And this is his story of the Conficker virus and the ways that it was captured and understood and reverse engineered, and maybe figuring out who unleashed this on the world. But it's beautifully written, and it's also on a larger focus. It's the study of computer viruses, just in general. Our computer viruses have advanced by light years since the Conficker virus. They are engineered now to self-destruct on the first sign of reverse engineering. Once upon a time, you could set up a honeypot. You could set up a kind of a closed system so that nothing could be infected by it and nothing could leave it. And that closed system gave you analytic ability of anything that was inside it. And then once you had that closed system set up, you would then connect it to a piece of software that you know is infected with a computer virus. The virus jumps to that new honeypot, and then you have it contained. You have it somewhere where it can't hurt anything else, and you can study it. You can break it down and reverse engineer it. You can figure out how it works, how it propagates, where it comes from, what is the self-replicating instructions inside it, and how can you counteract them. This book is full of stories of the white hats who do that and the black hats who make these things, which is really a pure distillation of the human propensity for evil. Humans are incredibly predisposed for evil, but computer malware is a pure distillation of that, because the maker is not benefiting in any way. They're making something that is purely destructive just because they don't benefit from it in any way whatsoever. It's not like the in a lot of cases, it's not like the malware is sending them back any information. They're just unleashing it into the world because they're bored, or their mother didn't love them, or whatever the reason is. They're a really pure distillation of human evil, and they're much more sophisticated now, much more. They don't want to be reverse engineered. They don't want to be honey trapped. They don't want to be understood in any way. Most of them are programmed to self-destruct before they do that. And they have a lot greater range. They propagate a lot faster. They're a lot smarter at hiding themselves and camouflaging themselves. But the Conficker virus was no slouch in any of those departments. It's fascinating to read about. Fascinating to read about, especially since Bowden comes right out and says what security experts will tell you anyway, which is that your computer certainly is infected with viruses, and you don't know what half of them are. There are some diagnostic tools that you can use on your computer to see some of them, but some of them are designed to avoid those tools. The designers know what the most likely, most downloaded, most oftenly used diagnostic tools are. They take those diagnostic tools apart, reverse engineer them, and figure out a virus that can hide specifically from them. So it's a grim subject. Okay, great. This is fantastic. This is M. John Harrison. This is a beautiful collection of his Variconium novels and short stories. Beautiful floppy binding here. Great embossed mechanism cover. You've got the deckled edges and the French flaps. I remember when this collection came out in 2005. This collection came out in 2005. I think I was still working in a bookstore at the time. And I think we got it in the store, and I was just overjoyed. I'd been recommending these things forever, but when I recommended them to customers or to coworkers or fellow readers of any kind, I was always, saying, I can try and find you some of the old Timescape mass market paperbacks. I can try to do that. It'll be a while, but they do occasionally crop up, and I grab them whenever I see them. And then this thing came out, which is prettier than any of them, and durable and new. These are high fantasy stories, some of the best ever written. Certainly some of the best prose that's ever been done in the service of epic fantasy, about the city Variconium, which is so old and so fragmented and so bored and tired and sort of lazy that it barely remembers its own past. It's not even sure that it's real. And sometimes its geography changes. Sometimes the names in the past will change in just lazy waves, like a curtain being blown in the summer wind. It's amazing. It's tough to describe the reality of it. It's an amazing fantasy world. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. And this paperback, thankfully, had a bit of a print run, so you will be able to find copies. I'm not actually sure how readily available those old Timescape mass market paperbacks are. Now that eBay and other such sites exist and proliferate, maybe you can find those as well. Okay, then we have a little mass market paperback that doesn't belong here. Ooh, this has a section. This is a reprint of Through the Magic Door by Arthur Conan Doyle. And this is a bunch of his reflections. The Magic Door is into reading. This is a collection of period piece nonfiction work that he did on the joys of reading. And it's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. We think of Arthur Conan Doyle, as synonymous with Sherlock Holmes, but he was a lifelong, passionate reader. And boy, oh boy. Yeah, there we go. This lovely edition here, The Love of Books. This edition was made by Common Reader Editions, the Acadine Press. And it is wonderful. And the only reason that I'm knowing is because it obviously doesn't belong here. I have a bookcase, a huge bookcase full of books and about the joys of reading. And there's no sense having those all in one place if I don't have all of them in one place. So I will set this aside. Okay, then we have another relatively new edition. This came out when we knew each other. This was 2017. I thought this was great. This is by Ed Finn, and it's called What Algorithms Want. And it's all about complex algorithms that increasingly shape the contours of our world. And that even when he wrote this book 5 years ago, still did very much shape the contours of our world in ways that a lot of people don't know, to an extent that a lot of people don't know. And with a future that looks like it's only going to be much, much more of the same. A future that, bad enough that we have air travel by algorithm. Your pilot does not take off or land the plane. Your pilot does not make virtually any executive decisions in flight. It's algorithms that do that. It's bad enough that we have medical diagnoses by algorithm. Your doctor, your primary care physician, anything like that, they're working off algorithms as much as they are off, old Doc Fry and his instinct for your collywobbles. But this looks at the future of, policing by algorithm or government by algorithm. It's like Worm. It's a fascinating look at the underbelly of technology in a way that certainly mainstream media usually doesn't do. Okay, then we have another author who's come up often here. This is Robert Finch. This is his book, The Outer Beach. Just another look at Cape Cod, a curling spit of land off the coast of Massachusetts that is just it's the bean barking at something. I guess I don't have to worry about her mellowing out anytime soon. But this was wonderful. I wrote about it, I think, for the Christian Science Monitor. And the little frustration here with me is that I've never seen the paperback of this book. I got the hardcover from the publisher, but I never got the paperback. And the reason that I especially want to see the paperback is because I wrote about it for the Christian Science Monitor, and my friend Sam wrote about it for the Wall Street Journal. He usually does just fiction for them, but he loves the Cape as much as I do, so he wrote about this for them. And I'd love to know if we are both quoted by name on the paperback. I try to keep all those paperbacks. I'm sure that I haven't seen them all. But we don't usually overlap much anymore. He sticks mostly to contemporary fiction, which I read but what would I write about it? Just a string of obscenities. So it's rare that we overlap like that, and I love it when it happens. Uh, I keep meaning to just order a paperback of this book just to see what it looks like, but I never do. Okay, then we have an author who you're not going to find in my book collection anywhere else. Just this one place. This is W.E.B. Griffin, who wrote a million He-Man military works of fiction that, for me, just sit there on the page. They just are completely one-dimensional, completely predictable, completely everything that you would think. All the martial values, women as subhuman creatures who mainly exist, their main biological function is to produce more men and also to make sandwiches. And so I didn't hold out high hopes for this new series. There's a series that he did called Clandestine Operations, set during World War II. And I loved it right from the beginning. And it got better as it went along. This, I think, is book number 4. And it's Death at Nuremberg. And if you look closely at this cover, you'll see the reason why. Because William Butterworth wrote these things, not W.E.B. Griffin, who's like 170 years old. And they're great. Absolutely great. All of them are. I don't have all of them in hardcover. I wish I did. Just the Clandestine Operations things, just the William Butterworth volumes. I wish I had all of those. I keep meaning to find them at library book sales. I found one up in Vermont other than this. I think I found another one up in Vermont. Which was the one that I found? I wonder if I'll know it by name. Unfortunately, they all have very boring names. Curtain of Death, I think, is the one that I found, or maybe it was Top Secret. Imagine writing a book and calling it Top Secret. God help us. Anyway, these are terrific. And the action sequences in them, oh my God. Oh my God. Any of you who've done any creative writing, if you've ever tried it, you'll know that an action sequence is a really, really hard thing to write well. And Butterworth does a great job. So conspicuously better than the job that W.E. Griffin did ever. 80 million tries at that. Then we have another relatively modern book. This is, I think, from 2020. Yeah, from 2020. This is by Keith Cooper, and it is The Contact Paradox. And it's all about the search for extraterrestrial life, for the Fermi paradox. That's the paradox really that's being referred to here. Enrico Fermi, this is him saying, well, there are billions of galaxies, and there are billions of solar systems in all of those galaxies, and they've existed for billions and billions of years. So where are all the aliens? Where are they all? Why isn't all of mankind's memory going back 250,000 years? Why hasn't our whole existence been as animals in a zoo for some other alien species? Why don't we find their remains? Why don't we hear their signals? Where are they? If life, we can assume on the odds, is so prolific and so old, it stands to reason that a whole bunch of alien civilizations would have spawned, grown immense, grown old, grown extinct, and then had others replace them, all easily allotted in the time that we have. And yet, no hint of that whatsoever. And this book looks at all of the various wrinkles and perturbations of that. I think that the solution to the Fermi paradox, the simplest solution, is the most depressing and I think the most obvious and the most likely, which is that the development of intelligent technological life, which is what we're talking about here, we're not talking about pond scum. I think the development of technological intelligent life is virtually impossible. I think it's like getting a straight flush 50 times in a row. I think the odds against it are unbelievable. Your solar system cannot be swept by radiation. You have to have just the right orbit around your star. Your solar system also can't be bombarded by the radiation from a nearby supernova, which happens all the time. It will completely sterilize your solar system forever. And it just happens to have not happened here. You have to have a species that can master fire. For instance, fire is necessary for metallurgy. Metallurgy is necessary for advanced technology. So you have to have a species that can master fire. That in itself, I would think, is staggeringly rare. I would think that most species that achieve sentience achieve it in water, where species are born. I would think that would be true. They need digits. They don't have to have sexy gloves, but they need digits to manipulate. Technology needs, you need manipulatable digits to do that. You can't be a worm and have technology. No matter how smart you are, you'll just be able to contemplate your wormness. You won't be able to build anything. what's the likelihood that such a thing would develop? And even if you developed in the open air where you can have fire, and even if you developed very dexterous, the ability to manipulate your environment, you would still need a brain that put those things together. It would have to be a big brain in proportion to your body mass. It would have to be a big, really complex brain, and that is not favored by natural selection. It seems to me a likely thing to say that most species that develop simply their natural selection pressures select away from that. That seems natural to me. I mean, humans have a big, unbelievably complex brain. It requires an enormous percentage of your daily nutrition intake in order to maintain that one organ. An enormous percentage. And it's unbelievably dangerous. The size and complexity of the human brain means not only that childbirthing is extremely dangerous, it can kill the mother, but also that childhood will last forever. It'll last forever. A 4-year-old human is effectively helpless and knows a bare tiny fraction of the amount of information it will be carrying around in its head in only 10 years. That doesn't make any sense, evolutionary speaking. The only way that gets safeguarded is if you have a strong culture, a strong mutually protective culture, which is also a rarity. That's also selected against for natural selection. I mean, the dinosaurs ruled this planet for millions of years. They were pretty complex. They were pretty advanced in terms of natural selection pressures. They had a lot of them big brains. Saw a lot of them very, very dexterous digits. They never did anything like that. And it wasn't because they were dumb. They weren't dumb. It was because, in fact, science, I think, is learning more and more how intelligent they were. It was because they were born and they were ready to go in 2 months, at the most, 2 months, ready to go and hunt. Not staying a child, ruthlessly absorbing energy into that gigantic brain that gets bigger and bigger until you're, 13 or 14 when you're first getting the inklings to reproduce? But when you're 13 or 14, socially speaking, and also usually physically speaking, you're in no condition to have and rear a family. So you have to tack on another 15 years after that. Even elephants aren't that slow. And elephants are a perfect example. Very strong, mutually protective social environment, and very large, very complex brains capable of all kinds of the functions of sentience that humans once abrogated only to themselves. But elephants don't have the digits required. They have just one extremely dexterous digit. That's all. Anyway, that's my answer to the contact paradox. Is that the reason there aren't any aliens, or I would argue almost none, is because those factors all have to line up right, or you don't get an intelligent technological society. They all have to line up right, and I would argue that they almost never do. Anyway, we don't have many more to go, I promise. We have, for instance, Viscount Grey of Phaladon. He was typically known as that, Grey of Phaladon. He was a lifelong amateur bird lover. He wrote a whole bunch of books. I have everything that he's ever written. He wrote a book on fishing. He wrote a book I wrote his memoirs and whatnot. And this is just his book on birds. Just a collection of his writing on birds. That is, I find his prose style just delightful, very, very Edwardian, but I love it. Then we have a hardcover of Thomas Harris's novel Red Dragon, which some of you will know from a bad movie adaptation with Anthony Hopkins, or a really good adaptation with Brian Cox as Hannibal Lecter, called Manhunter. That movie is really, really good. The movie that's actually called Red Dragon has Edward Norton in the lead, and he is just sleepwalking through the role. It has Anthony Hopkins playing Hannibal Lecter. So it's not very good at all. Visually, it's very interesting, and it's more accurate to the book. But the book is terrific, absolutely terrific. And then finally, we'll finish up at long last with this. This is by Ed Pinney in collaboration with Carol Jones, and this is Chappaquiddick Speaks. And it is about an incident of a minor footnote now in American history that a lot of you won't know unless you know your American history. Chappaquiddick is sort of a kind of a quasi-island connected with Cape Cod, and it's famous in American history. Its famous spot in American history is that a young Ted Kennedy was driving on a road there, probably intoxicated, with a campaign worker, a young campaign worker of his, Mary Jo Kopechne, and the car went off the road into the water, not deep water, but deep enough, and Kennedy got out, and that we know because he lived. He went on to serve in the Senate for 50 years. Mary Jo Kopechne did not. She died in that car in Chappaquiddick. And everything after that has been a mystery, a bone of contention, controversies left, right, and center. Kennedy claimed that he tried many times to save her, that he tried to pull open the door and it didn't work. And then he didn't tell anybody. He didn't immediately call for everybody to help him to get her out of the car before she drowned, until the next day when she was, clearly going to be dead. And the Chappaquiddick is sort of shorthand for the fact that we never had a second President Kennedy, because Edward Kennedy would certainly have won the next presidential race that he was in. He would certainly have won it if people hadn't been able to just ruthlessly bring this up. Well, what about Chappaquiddick? Well, what about Chappaquiddick? He couldn't get rid of that. It stuck with him, and scuppered his chances. Not that we should be talking about his chances, right? We should be talking about Mary Jo Kopechne, who died and saw her death coming. She wasn't stunned any more than he was. She saw her death coming. Her last minutes, maybe if she had an air pocket, her last hour, the subject of a famous novella called Blackwater. Her last hour, if she had an air pocket, must have been absolute hellish misery. Because not only did she know that she was going to die, that she couldn't get out of the car, but she knew that her hero left her. Bill Pinney has a new theory about what happened that night at Chappaquiddick. It doesn't really change anything. It doesn't change the outline that I just gave you, but I thought it was fascinating, and he's a close enough local writer so I was able to review the book. I thought I gave it a fair shake. But anyway, that is this shelf. This went on way too long. I will wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.